بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم جميعا. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to our fourth and final sitting in our two-day marriage series and seminar. And in this final sitting, we are going to discuss a matter that is absolutely crucial to the success of marriages. And as we learned in the previous lecture, the things that we should take into consideration and the questions that we should ask and what we should look into when selecting a suitable spouse. And so, likewise, similarly, something that is just as important, if not even more important, is the matter of preparing for marriage. And what that looks like for the brothers, and likewise what that looks like for the sisters. And this plays a big role in the success of marriages, because once you take the time to prepare for marriage, then you are going to be ready for all that you encounter within marriages. And even if you are not prepared for everything that comes up, because there are things that can possibly come up that you could not have known of. No one knows the ghaib. However, you do your utmost best to prepare. And someone who is prepared for marriage and took the time to learn and seek advice and read about the affairs of marriage and the rulings pertaining to marriage and that which they should look for when it comes to a spouse and the like, those who take the time to do that in comparison to those who do not and simply go into marriage based on emotional reasons, any feelings that they have for the potential spouse, or based on physical attraction alone, and that they base the suitability of someone that they want to marry based on that alone, then we see the detriment of that in the marriages. And you start to see that when these two, this couple, when they now are having turmoil in their marriages, you see from the things that they are complaining about with regards to their spouse, that usually this is due to lack of preparation, and likewise, in relation to the previous lecture, things that they did not look into before marriage, which is likewise not preparing for marriage. Part of preparing for marriage is knowing what to ask, knowing what to seek, knowing exactly what to look for in someone that is suitable for you. And more general, knowing what marriage entails and what you will encounter in marriage so that you are properly prepared for it. And there's an ideology or a mentality that many have, both brothers and sisters, when they are going into marriage, which is the idea of, I don't have to change for anyone. No one can make me change. Take me as I am, right? Take it or leave it, as if it's a product that you're buying from the store. Take it or leave it. And some want you to take them after they've expired and they're rotten and no one wants anything to do with that product, right? You should still take it. And if the person is sinning publicly, if the person is far away from the deen, they believe they don't need to change for anyone before marriage. That this person, if they truly want me and they truly love me, they should take me the way I am, and they should not try to change how I am or who I am for their benefit. And this is an incorrect way of thinking. And this is one of the ideologies and the mindsets that we've adopted from the Western culture. That we have been taught and brainwashed to believe that someone who tries to get you to change is someone who does not want good for you. Even if that person is getting you to change for the better. let's say marriage was not even in the picture at all. If you were living a life of disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are far away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you are a brother who is sitting in shisha spots, and doing drugs, and involved in crime, and not praying 5 times a day, and you're a sister who's not wearing hijab, and putting your awrah all over social media, and then someone comes to you and advises you and says, brother or sister, change your ways and fear Allah and change, you believe you don't need to change? Are you going to say to them, I don't change for no one? Rather, it is wajib for you to change whether you are marrying someone or not. So the shaitan tries to trick you and deceive you into thinking that if you change, you are changing for that person. And you're not real then if you don't do it. So what is the real thing to do? How are you real? To continue upon disobedience. You continue sinning and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and living a life that earns the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're real. But you should only change when it's for yourself. So continue to not wear hijab and continue to put your pictures all over social media. That is you being real and true to yourself. This is from the propaganda of the Western culture and from the whispers of shaitan. This is how shaitan convinces you to continue to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to make you believe that you are actually staying the way you are because you are concerned about sincerity. That shaitan is going to whisper to you, no, don't change, because when this person advises you, or when your mother says to wear hijab, or your mother says to stop doing drugs, when your father does so as well, that you should not listen to them, because if you were to change when they tell you to do so, then you are only doing it for them and you're not doing it for Allah. So only do it for Allah. And shaitan knows that your iman is not at that level. And so he will continue to whisper to you to keep you living that life of disobedience. And so likewise we have that attitude when it comes to marriage. That a brother will approach a sister and wants to get married, or a sister wants to get married to a particular brother, and after they've discussed certain aspects of marriage and the like, they find out from one another that one or the other has certain things about them that is something that Allah is not pleased with. And so when one of them then tells the other, you have to change this about yourself, they say, no, I don't have to change for anyone. I don't have to change for anyone. Know that this stubborn attitude and this attitude of arrogance is nothing but the whispers of shaitan to cause you to remain on this path of destruction and this path that only leads to the hellfire. This path that only leads to the hellfire, shaitan wishes for you to remain upon that. And how noble is it that you do change for the sake of marriage? Because if you do change for the sake of marriage, then that means you will be better for your children in the future. You will be better for your husband. Your husband, the brother himself, will be better for his wife and for his children if the two of them unite based on khair and based on the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so do not fall prey to the whispers of shaitan when shaitan tries to whisper to you and make you think that you are being real by not changing for anyone. Rather that could not be any further from the truth. That could be no further from the truth. Especially when the things that you are changing are things that are in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it comes to the matter of intention and being sincere for Allah, then what you do is when someone advises you to do something that is in obedience to Allah and leave off something that is disobedience to Allah, that you take their advice and you put it into action and you work on your sincerity at the same time. You work on changing your intention and doing these acts of obedience to Allah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And know that by you accepting the advice of someone who advises you with khair, that is part of you doing it for Allah's sake. Because what Allah has commanded us is to take the advice of those who advise us with khair. When someone enjoins the good and forbids the evil and we accept that and we implement it, we are rewarded for that. We are rewarded for that, and so we are following Allah and His Messenger when we do that. And so do not allow shaitan to play tricks and to deceive you into thinking otherwise. In this topic, or this lecture, inshaAllah ta'ala, we're going to discuss some of the ways that one must prepare themselves before even attempting to get married. What are some of the things that you have to work on, that you have to implement and strive to do, so that you are ready to be married, and so that you will have a successful marriage. Some of these things that I'll mention apply to both the brothers and the sisters. So if I don't specify it for any gender, then know that it applies to both the brothers and the sisters. However, if I do specify that this is specific for the brothers, then know that this particular thing is something more for the brothers to be preparing for. And likewise for the sisters. If there's something specific for the sisters, then I will also mention that it is specific to the sisters. First and foremost, the first aspect that one must prepare with regards to marriage is with regards to deen, with regards to your religion. We find many brothers and sisters, Muslims, who are not practicing, yet they do get married. And then you see the fruits of this neglect of neglecting being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, starting to practice, starting to pray, learn about their deen. They don't do that before marriage, and they simply get married based on what? Based on physical attraction, based on certain things that they're compatible, they have compatibility in, and that they see eye to eye, or how they want to live their lives. However, they are living lives of disobedience to Allah. The brother, he's perfectly fine with his wife not wearing hijab. They're both perfectly fine with music being in the household, their children watching TV and movies and all, those types of things. And so they marry neglecting the aspect of deen altogether. And then what happens is, when there are issues in their marriage, they do not go back to deen. They do not go back to, their reference point is not their religion. And what happens when they do that? You find them going to kuffar counseling, marriage counseling. They go to kuffar. Kuffar are now telling them, and the disbelievers are now telling them how they should be a good wife and a good husband to one another. This is how lowly that we've become, because we don't go back to our deen, and we don't learn our deen, and we don't find solutions for our marriages and any issues and disagreements that we have based on deen. Likewise, when our iman is low, when we are living lives of disobedience to Allah, what barakah and what blessing then do we expect in our marriages? If our union and how we married was haram, if the way that we married, meaning the way we celebrated our union, the wedding, was haram, the way we live our lives is based on haram, the way we raise our children is based on haram, what we allow into our homes is haram, where do we expect then the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come from in our marriages? And so this aspect is very important, and it is the most important aspect, that you have to learn your deen before getting married and work on your iman. And that begins with seeking knowledge of the deen. That begins with seeking knowledge of the deen. And that is something that is obligatory upon every single Muslim. It's not something that you have a choice in, to learn the deen. It's not like a choice between going to university and not going to university. Yes, you have a choice in that. But when it comes to learning your deen, specifically about the things that a Muslim must know, the aspects of the deen that a Muslim must know, such as aqeedah and how to pray and the like, these are things that ma'loom min ad-deen bil-darura, that it is known by necessity, and is known from the deen by necessity. Every Muslim must know about it, and no one is excused. Knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing His attributes, knowing His actions, knowing about the 6 pillars of Iman, the 5 pillars of Islam. These things that are from the basics of Islam that you must know, that you will be questioned about, these things are a must to know. And so how you prepare yourself with regards to your deen is by seeking knowledge, is by learning your deen. If the two of you are ignorant of the deen but you wish to get married, the two of you should encourage one another to either take a course learning the deen, seek out someone who can teach you your religion, go to your local masjid and see if there are classes that are suitable for your level to teach you from the basics. Learn your religion and become more practicing. If the sister, for example, does not wear hijab, she should start wearing hijab and cover herself. If the brother, he has habits that are not permissible, he should cut off those habits. The two of them should prepare to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or prepare for marriage by getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then their union will be blessed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless their marriage and preserve it for them. Likewise, you cannot be naive in that you are going to seek in someone else that which you yourself are not. You are not going to be a brother who is in the streets and you are looking for a sister who, mashallah, is covered and she's in the masjid and she's praying 5 times a day and the like. That is not possible. That you must seek, you must be exactly what you seek. So if you are looking for someone who is righteous and pious and obeying Allah, whether you are a sister or a brother, you yourself must be that as well. You yourself must be that as well. And when it comes to compatibility, this is at the top of the list. Compatibility in deen. That if you are someone who is practicing and you choose to marry someone who is not that practicing, that marriage usually does not last. That marriage usually does not last. And unfortunately, many times you find either sisters or brothers complaining about their spouse. This was because they neglected this issue before marriage. They knew this person was like that before marriage. In a lot of cases, it wasn't the case that the brother or sister were practicing before and then they fell off during the marriage. Rather, many times you find that the sister may have been practicing or the brother may have been practicing, but they chose to marry someone who was not practicing because of emotion, because of feelings, because of physical attraction, or sometimes even out of desperation, thinking that they can't find anything, so they just settled for whatever was available, thinking that this person will change, or that somehow I can change this person or advise this person. And then what happens is that either that person will bring them down and their iman will become low and they will start practicing just like them, or that they will struggle in their marriage and continue to struggle to the point where they can no longer bear the marriage and they are now seeking ways for divorce, and now they have several children and an entire family is now broken apart. And so this is crucial then to take this matter seriously before you get married. That you work on your deen, before even getting married. And this is important and something that we shouldn't ignore, because once you marry someone who is not practicing, then you are now putting your children at risk, as we mentioned previously, that you are putting your children at risk. And from the most important things when selecting a spouse, actually, is that you think about this person as it relates to them being the parent for the children that you will have in the future. So as a sister, do you believe that this man that you are going to marry will be a good example for your children? Will he raise your children correctly? When they look at him and see him on a day-to-day basis, do they see that this is a righteous man? Does he take, for example, will he take your sons to the masjid and to Salatul Jum'ah and keep them around practicing men? Will he teach them their deen? Will he surround them with khair? You have to marry the person that you want to raise your children upon righteousness. And so who you choose to marry is crucial, is extremely crucial as it pertains to raising your children. Many times we find a lot of couples, married couples, clashing because of a different philosophy in how they want to raise their children. The husband wants to do certain things and allow certain things, or the sister wants to allow certain things and do certain things. And they are clashing now because of that. And that is because they neglected the matter of deen from the get-go. They neglected the matter of deen from the get-go. And deen is the foundation of the marriage aslan. The deen is the foundation. It is what marriage in Islam is based on. Our deen is not how the kuffar are, that you just find someone, you fall in love with them, you guys spend years and years dating, and then you eventually get married. That is not how it is in Islam. Islam, marriage is an act of worship. Marriage is an act of worship, is an ibadah, just like all the other ibadat. And so it is based then on deen. It is based on religion. Anything that happens in the marriage, we go back to the deen as a solution for it. Any disagreement, any issue that occurs, we go to the deen to solve those issues. And so that is, and it shows that it's crucial then to prepare with regards to your deen, to prepare and to learn your deen, and to learn your deen. And likewise, the more obedience you have towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a couple, the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless your marriage. The more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless your marriage, insha'Allah ta'ala. The second aspect as it pertains to preparing for marriage is character-wise. Your personality. If you are, for example, someone who is individualistic, you're an individual, you like to do things on your own, you don't really mix with many people and the like, that won't work if you are trying to get married. There's no way you can be an individual in marriage. You now will have a companion. You will have someone that you will be doing things with, that you will have to consider when you are doing certain things. So that aspect of your life you will have to reflect on, and you will have to change. You have to change that about yourself. If there are certain character traits that you have that you know will not be an ingredient for a successful marriage, that some things about you in terms of your characteristics and your character traits or your personality, you know that it will harm a marriage. You know that in terms of having a relationship, that it would possibly ruin it or it would make things difficult. You have to work on those types of things beforehand. And the way you can find out about that is by asking people who know you. What are your flaws and what are your strengths? What are things that you are good at? What are some things that people like about you? And increase in that. And what are certain things that people find in your character that is not praiseworthy? And those things you have to work on and change before marriage if you want a successful marriage. If you want a successful marriage. For example, if you are someone who is hot-tempered, if you are someone who gets angry easily, if you are someone who lacks patience, especially if you are a man, then that type of personality will not work in a marriage. You will have to learn to be tolerant. You will have to learn to work on your temper. You will have to learn not to jump to conclusions when things appear to be wrong, or you may have heard something that you believe is negative and the like. You have to be able to work on these things. And from the ways that you can do that is by seeking advice. Seeking advice to those who you trust. Either a person of knowledge, a student of knowledge, a sheikh that you might know, elders in your community. Say, I believe I have this and this issue. How can I work on that? What should I do in terms of working or changing that about myself? Look to see what the deen says about good character. That the Prophet ﷺ said that there will be nothing that will be more weighty than good character on the scales on the Day of Judgment. The scale of good deeds on the Day of Judgment, the thing that will weigh the most is good akhlaq. And in another hadith, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that he was not sent except to perfect good moral character. An upright moral character. So the thing that he was sent with was to perfect character. And so it shows us then the status of good character in Islam. It shows us the status of good character in Islam. And that is something that is beneficial to your marriage. Something that is beneficial to your marriage. Another aspect, the third aspect in terms of preparing for marriage, is health-wise. Health-wise. To be someone who is of good health, meaning being fit, trying to do some sort of activity, whether it's even as little as walking, for a bit, throughout the day, in terms of your diet, in terms of what you eat, watching out for what you eat. And that is not only for the sake of your physical appearance. Yes, that's also important. It's not simply for that reason, but also for your general health, because you want to be able to have offspring, for example. You want to be able to have healthy children. And so your health depends on these things. Your health depends on these things. And this is not something that should be delayed until after marriage. And you say that, yeah, inshallah, when I do get married, I'll start doing that. That brother said, when I do get that, when I do get married, I'll start going to the gym and get rid of this, belly, right? Then when I get married, inshallah, that's when I'll, and then you see he gets married and he's double the size that he was before. Because his wife is making all these cupcakes and everything for him. Allah understand. So this is something you have to pay attention to before marriage. This is something you have to pay attention to before marriage. Likewise, so you can be active and you can have an active life with your children. You can play with them and chase them around and play with them in the park and take them, If you are someone who is not able to do that and you're in your 20s, Allahumma musta'an. Imagine being in your 20s and you can't run around with your child and you cannot play with your child and your child wants to play with you and you're not able to do so in your 20s. I can understand in your 60s and 70s maybe, but in your 20s, Allahumma musta'an. That means in your 30s your child's going to be taking care of you, right? As if you're an old man. Allahumma musta'an. So taking care of your health is important before marriage for many reasons, as we mentioned, in terms of offspring and procreating and having children, and likewise being able to spend time with your children and playing with them. The fourth point, as it pertains to preparing for marriage, and this is specific to brothers, more so towards the brothers, and that is preparing financially. To prepare financially for marriage, especially in the times that we live in today, and especially living in the West, where it is not cheap to be able to provide for a family and support a family. You'll be responsible for rent, you'll be responsible for bringing food into the house, you'll be responsible for, especially if you live in the colder states and cities, for having a vehicle to get around, your children's school expenses, things that your wife may need, many different things that just come up sometimes suddenly that you don't even normally prepare for. So these things are a must that you prepare for ahead of time. And something that will make it easier for you in marriage is that you do have savings before you even go into marriage. A lot of brothers go into marriage and the only money they have is the last paycheck that they made, right? The last paycheck that they made is how they go into marriage. Sometimes because all the money went into the marriage itself, to the walima and the mahar and all of these different things. And so he goes into his marriage broke. He doesn't have any money when he actually goes into marriage. And so if you save, however, for years and years before you eventually get married, then you do have something to fall back on. And inshallah you have a good steady job and a good steady income. And then for things that come up that are miscellaneous, that you were not expecting to happen, but they do happen, at least you have something to fall back on. But if you wait to save until after marriage, trust me, you will not be able to save in marriage. Trust me, unless you become a millionaire somehow and Allah puts barakah in your rizq in that way, you won't be able to save, or at least it will not be as easy to save while married, especially when children come and all of the expenses that come with children. So to make it easier for yourselves as brothers, save with the intention of marriage. Save with the intention of marriage. And my advice to families and to sisters and to the parents of sisters and those who are around our sisters, because they are the ones that are going to be provided for, And the success when it comes to the financial aspect of marriage and the lifestyle that the couple will live and the money that they will be living based on, if instead of putting thousands and thousands of dollars into a wedding hall that is rented and a gold that is brought from Dubai, all the way from Dubai for her, right? And all of these things that money is spent on. If imagine you took that money and you put it towards the couple, that you use that money for them to buy furniture, for them to decorate their home, for them to buy a car, so that they at least have a good start in their marriage and they're not worrying about living paycheck to paycheck because they wasted all of that money on one night. Would it not make more sense to help this young couple in this way? Right? Would it not make more sense to help them and let them have a good head start in their marriage? Because from the biggest reasons, or from the greatest reasons that causes divorce, is financial issues. That a sister was used to a certain lifestyle before marriage or the beginning of her marriage, but then it doesn't last. That brother isn't able to no longer provide that same lifestyle. And then she loses patience and she now wants a divorce. And so the harms of these weddings, extravagant weddings and expensive weddings and all of this money that is thrown away just for one specific night, from its harms is that it puts them in a negative sometimes. Sometimes a brother will go into a marriage, forget with the last paycheck that he made, with debts. He went into debt just to get married and borrowed money and all of these different things. And the family even borrowed money and they go into Hagbed or Ayuta as you know, right? And he's still paying every month, he's still paying that money just to get married. Marriage is not supposed to be that difficult. Marriage is not supposed to be that difficult and is not supposed to be that burdensome. Marriage is not supposed to be that difficult and that burdensome. So instead of wasting money on these things for the sake of the marriage to be successful and to relieve this couple of the burden of the finances of marriage and the marital life and the expenses that they'll have, and to give them a good start, instead put that money towards them. Let them use it for what they are, what they need more. They do not need a wedding dress that costs $5,000. They can use that $5,000 to buy a car that they can use for 10 years to 15 years. Imagine. Only though if we use our intellects. Only if we were to use our intellects that we would be doing this. But when we are more worried and more concerned with showing off and the pictures that we're going to post on social media and the praise that we're going to get from others and the envy that we're going to get from others, imagine we do all of that and all in the end, someone always has something to say of even the weddings. Even these extravagant weddings, all you hear is criticism. Oh, they didn't have this and they didn't have that and the food was cold and the juice was warm. No one even praises it. So all of that money wasted and you didn't even get what you wanted in terms of praise. So this is, subhanAllah, and this is something that is so common today. And the majority of us fall into it. The majority of us fall into this. And also this aspect of 50-50 that we discussed also before, from the brainwashing of the West and the Western culture, that a lot of brothers, especially if they don't do the first point that we mentioned, which is learn their deen, that they go into marriages believing that marriages should function in accordance with what they're learning here in the West, not what our deen says. So they don't know anything about the ahadith that mention that the man is responsible for providing for his family, or the ayat that talk about that, but rather all he knows is 50-50 because he heard it on a podcast. He heard some kafir speaking about it on a podcast, and now he believes that's what he should be seeking. And this is unfortunate, that he believes that his wife, even if she's in the home, taking care of his kids, and taking care of the home, and she's cooking for him, that likewise she has to somehow also at the same time bring in money to pay half the bills and half of everything. Because why? Because that is how it works in the West. So obviously we have to also do the same thing. Rather, that does not exist in our deen as Muslims. that has no basis in our deen as Muslims. This aspect also of providing, and this applies to the sister that follows her deen and is not corrupted by these Western ideologies, is that when her husband is providing for her and giving her everything that she desires in terms of, in moderation of course, that she is content with the way that she is living, that is a means of her respecting her husband. That if the husband is someone who does not work, even though he has the ability to work, he's not injured or he has no other issue that prevents him from working, but he's just lazy, he just chooses to sit at home, and his wife is the one that's working and paying all the bills, that exists. And somehow that brother believes he's a practicing man and what emulates a Muslim man. That his wife is the one working 9 to 5 as a Muslimah in hijab with children, and he's fine with her leaving children at daycare, and she works 9 to 5, or she has a career, whatever. She may be a nurse or whatever the case is, and he sits home and watches soccer all day or basketball or whatever the case is. That's what he believes is a husband. Or he's sitting in coffee shops or sitting in this place and that place, or even just sitting in the masjid and he spends all the time in the masjid. That's not appropriate. That is not appropriate as a man. That is not appropriate as a man. And what that will cause is that the wife, depending on how obedient she is to Allah and depending on how much she fears Allah, will her tolerance with you remain. If she really, really fears Allah, she'll try to be patient as much as possible. And if she doesn't, what will you find outside the door? The black bag, right? You'll find all your clothes outside. Hit the road. Hit the road, Jack. I'm going to say to you. Because you will lose the respect of your wife. If you expect the woman to be the provider, that means you are putting her in a role that Allah did not create her to be in. And the hustle and bustle of the outside life and working and providing and the fatigue and then coming home to a family and then she has to take care of you and your children and all of that, no one or not many people can be patient with that. And so usually that will end in losing the respect of your wife. Even if it doesn't lead to divorce, the relationship between the two of you will be pretty much over. And the two of you will end up as if you were two roommates living in a house. And that any aspect of any husband and wife or anything that is between, normally between a husband and wife, will no longer remain. Somehow to the point where she is sleeping in the bedroom but you sleep in the living room. As if you are two people who are just living in the same house, but you have no other relationship between you or no other connection between you except that you are only now husband and wife by name, because the actual marriage and the life of the marriage has now died. And one thing that I would advise a brother, and this is also depends on their ability, is that if you are able to, when you are nearing the time to get married and you know that you are going to get married soon and you have a stable job and the like, then I would advise you to get your own place before you even get married. Not to continue living in your mother's house or your father's house and to continue living there paying no bills or doing nothing. That if you're able to, meaning if you know that you're going to get married soon or you have someone in mind that you're going to get married to, before you even get married, live on your own and have your own place that you're paying rent already and you already are in that mode of paying bills and you're already used to it. You already have that level of maturity. So now when you bring in a wife, so you're not starting it from the time that you get married. That you're already used to living on your own and fending for yourself and taking care of yourself, cooking for yourself, cleaning your own home. You already built those habits. You already built those habits, so it's not going to be any shock for you that the first day that you're living on your own is the day that you and your wife are living on your own. The sixth point, I believe, with regards to the things that you should look into and in terms of the preparation for marriage, is by knowing yourself and what you dislike. That you have to know the things that you like and the things that you dislike before you even get married. And you prepare ahead of time by knowing, because as we mentioned in the previous lecture, that if you know what you like, then you know what to seek. If you know what you like in terms of a woman, in terms of her behavior, in terms of her personality, then you know what to seek. And if you know what you dislike in terms of personality, in terms of character, then you also know what to avoid. And so if you don't have that before marriage, and you don't prepare in that way, then you will choose someone that may not be good for you. You'll choose someone that may not be good for you. It will also help you identify what you yourself need to work on. Because sometimes it may be that you do like a particular personality trait, but after you get to know a particular sister, you start to find out things about yourself that you don't have, that you are not like that. But you find out from her mentioning that this is something that she's looks for in a man or in a husband, then you now know that you are lacking in that aspect. And so it will cause you then to work on yourself. It will cause you to then work on yourself before marriage. The seventh point in terms of preparation for marriage is to make dua for a righteous spouse. It is to make dua, sincere dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a righteous spouse. Many of us may take into consideration all of these other aspects, but we forget the aspect of dua. We forget that who we get as a spouse, and if our spouse, our future spouse, will be someone who is actually good for us and that we will be happy with, we forget that all of that is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That all of that is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah is the only one that can provide us with that. That Allah is the one that if Allah wills for us to have a righteous spouse, whether it's a brother or a sister, that He is the one that can determine that for us. So we must make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly. That not only when you find someone and you want that person to be the one that you marry, but before you even find someone. Even if you don't have anyone that you're considering or there's no one in the picture, that you constantly make dua that Allah provides you with a righteous spouse. The eighth aspect that we should look into or consider when preparing for marriage is maturity-wise. Maturity-wise, because marriage requires maturity from both the brothers and the sisters. When we are young, usually, we are quick to make decisions. We are hasty to make decisions. One little thing and we bail, right? But when you are mature, you know that you have ta'anni in Arabic. Ta'anni meaning you wait to see, you wait and you are not hasty. The opposite of hastiness, that you are cautious and you are patient in terms of making your decision. You wait and you consider all angles before even understanding what was said to you. So you may hear a statement, and when you're younger, you're hasty to jump the gun. And so, how dare you say this? How dare you say that? How this? And you jump the gun and you make a decision based on that in an immediate way. However, when you get older and you have maturity, you wait and you're patient. You consider what was said. You think about it. You contemplate, even if it takes a day, 2 days, 3 days, before you act. You think before you act. And so marriage requires a lot of maturity. Marriage requires a lot of maturity and a lot of wisdom. And even if you are young and you don't have the experience to know how to deal with every situation as it comes, then at least if you are smart enough and you have the maturity enough to then go seek advice from those who can advise you correctly before making a hasty decision. Say, oh, Sheikh, so-and-so, I'm experiencing this in my marriage, what would you advise me? Instead of acting right away on your own. And so you have to do that. Likewise, just in your general lifestyle, in terms of maturity, if you now, as a young man or as a young sister, the majority of your life, you find yourself every other day or every day what you spend your time doing is chilling with your friends and going eating at this restaurant, and walking around malls and playing 2K all day, right? Or Fortnite actually now. 2K is a long time ago now. So Fortnite, 16 hours a day. You think you're ready for marriage? What, are you gonna get your wife to play Fortnite with you? You have to grow beyond this and realize there's more to life than playing Fortnite for 16 hours a day or doing these types of things. I need that. It's just a waste of time for the most part. Yes, in moderation. Once in a while you chill with your friends. Once in a while you go out to eat. Once in a while you get a coffee or some tea with your friends. Yes, that's fine. However, that your entire life revolves around just fun and playing and enjoyment, that is not someone who is prepared for marriage. Likewise, that is more for the brothers, but even for the sisters, just on social media day and night, on TikTok, on this one, on that one, and spending all of their time doing this, then you are not prepared for marriage. These types of things are not things that will help you prepare for marriage. Likewise, they are not things that should exist in a marriage. And so you find some people getting married and they are exactly how they were when they were single in their marriage. That same brother is now in marriage, living with his wife, living his life exactly as he was before, as if this woman who's now in his home does not even exist. Right? As if he's still in his mother's basement. Nothing has changed. And likewise, her scrolling all over social media until her eyes become red, until she falls asleep. For 10 hours, 12 hours on social media, 15 hours screen time on the phone. Your entire life on social media, your entire world. What has happened to many, especially the youth now, is that social media, which is a fake world, has become their real world. They live in social media more than real life. Someone will be sitting with you right there, you can call their name 10 times, they did not hear you once. Because you are the fake, you're fake. You are actually not there. What's there is whatever they're looking at on social media. Allah musta'an. And this is an addiction. This social media and these types of things that now the kuffar have created for us to become distracted. As Shaykh Muhammad Umar Bazmoon, he said no. He's from the ulama of Mecca and the mufti of Mecca currently. Shaykh Muhammad Bazmoon, he mentioned that when you are being sold something free, when you are being given something for free, know that you are the product. He said, know that you are the product. Meaning when you are buying something with money, yes, you bought something. But when someone is giving you something for free, know that you are the product. Instagram, is it for money? Do you pay to use Instagram? Do you pay to use YouTube? Do you pay to use Snapchat and TikTok or any of these things? They're all free, sah? They're all free because you are the product. You are the product. You are the thing that is being bought. Your attention, your deen, your time. You are the thing that is being bought, and then now you are living more in that world than you are living in the real world. And so when you become so addicted before marriage to these things, what happens then is that it affects your life in the real world, which is especially in marriages. And Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Abbad, Hafidhullah, from the ulama of al-Medina, he mentioned that from the greatest of destructions in today's time of marriages and the causes of divorce is smartphones. From the greatest of destructions in marriages is smartphones. Likewise, what is required when it comes to marriage is for brothers to learn about the nature of women, the behavior of women. That shows your maturity. That if you're just, still young and youthful and you don't know any aspect of women, but you want to get married, that will also not work. You have to know their nature. You have to know so that you are properly prepared for when you start to see some of these behaviors when you get married, and that you learn that a sister is not similar to a brother, that men and women are different, and likewise sisters. She should learn how men think and how men behave and how she can best approach her husband and speak to her husband and the like. These things are crucial to know before marriage and are requirements of, and are part of maturity, are part of maturity. Likewise, and finally, when it comes to maturity and how you can prepare for marriage, is that some of the things that you will be required to do or that you will participate in doing in your marriage, that you start doing it even in your own household now. If you live with your parents now, help around the house. Don't sit there and wait for your mother to do things. SubhanAllah, Shaykh Hamad al-Ansari, rahimahullah, from the ulama al-muhaddithin of al-Medina, he mentioned that in his time, his father had 3 wives, living all in the same apartment, he said. And he said he does not remember from the time that he was young up until his age at that time, his mother ever doing anything in the house. Not cleaning, not cooking, not anything. He mentioned that he does not remember seeing his mother do anything. SubhanAllah. That this was from the children that would do it. That the children would do these chores and the mother would not even do these things. And so you as a brother, or even as or especially as a sister, that you help around the house with cooking, with cleaning, with doing groceries. As a brother, your mother should never be the one that is going out to do groceries in -20 weather, snow, blizzard, and your mother is driving a car at night doing groceries while you sit at home and watch TV all day. That is absolutely unacceptable. So these types of things you should be doing and making a habit of it from now, so that when you get married, that it becomes second nature to you. It becomes second nature to you and you don't have to learn it once you get married. That it becomes a burden, it becomes hard when you get married. We'll conclude there, inshaAllah ta'ala, due to Salatul Isha. InshaAllah ta'ala, after the Salah, we'll sit for about 30 minutes, so we're not too long regarding the, because it gets too late. We'll sit for about 30 minutes for the Q&A, inshaAllah ta'ala. As we mentioned yesterday, keep the questions to the topic of marriage, inshaAllah ta'ala, and anything I'm able to answer, I'll answer, inshaAllah ta'ala. And since this will be the last talk, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that which was mentioned the past 2 days beneficial to the brothers and sisters of this community and to all those who were watching online, and that they take these matters seriously and that they hasten to marriage and they do not delay marriage. Do not believe that you are too young to get married. Do not believe that you are too young or that marriage is some difficult thing that requires years and years of preparation, years and years of saving. Save yourselves from the trials and tribulations in these societies. There's too many horror stories and things that we see and hear from parents suffering with their youth because of the things that they're indulging in now, and many of it stems from this issue of marriage either being made difficult for them or marriage not even being in the picture at all. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make marriage easy for the brothers and sisters, and for the parents, for Allah to guide those that are guardians for them to make matters easy for them. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide them to make marriage easy for the youth, and for the marakiz and the masajid to facilitate marriage, to have programs and means for sisters to approach the masjid to find out about brothers who are seeking marriage. And likewise from the brother side, that they're able to go to the masjid and those in charge of the masajid to find out sisters that are also seeking marriage, and that the masjid be the place where these brothers and sisters meet. Because if you do not do so, then you make the halal difficult for the youth. They will go seek it in the haram. And as a community, that is a failure. As a community and people who are in the occupation, or that have taken it upon themselves to guide the Muslims to that which is good and to guide them to piety, if you fail in this aspect, and the youth that come to you and come to your durus and they come to your lessons and they pray with you and pray tarawih with you and they do i'tikaf in your masajid and they're with you for years and years, only later on for you to find out that they fell into zina, or that the sister who was here memorizing the Quran later on got pregnant out of zina, that is a failure in the community. That is a failure in the community, or that their iman goes so weak that they now leave off practicing altogether due to the fitna of the temptation that surrounds them. So I urge and I encourage the masajid and the marakiz to facilitate these types of things and have some sort of program that facilitates marriage for them, and that they also take on the role of advising the parents. That if the youth come to you and say, my father is difficult for this and this reason, or that they're making things difficult due to tribe or due to this, that you have someone of knowledge, of someone who is respected in the masjid, to sit them down and to speak to them and to explain to them the dangers that the youth are going through now and the things that the youth express to you, and they tell you and they share with you in terms of the suffering that they're going through, in terms of sins, and in terms of lowering the gaze and the like, and the things that they, some of them fearing falling into zina, as practicing brothers and sisters, terrified of falling into zina, all because it is being made difficult for them. We conclude there. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.